Good morning and welcome to another weekly episode. We're on year 3 of Account-Based Fridays. We talk all things go-to-market best practices on both sides of the bow tie, on the acquisition side. And today we've got a special guest returning from Canada, Julie Perofsky, who will be properly introduced by Meg in a moment. But welcome back, Julie, from Canada, and we are excited to have you. Before we dive in and before I hand it over to Meg, in the upper corner, there's a QR code that'll bring you to our 300 plus videos that we've done on best practices around go-to-market strategies, including account-based. If you have a specific question that you're trying to get addressed, you could certainly DM Meg or I. And just as a reminder, this conversation is as much yours as it is ours. So if you have specific questions, in this case, we're going to be talking about renewals and NRR and strategies around how marketers are getting pulled in this direction. If you have a specific question for Julie or for us, you can add it in LinkedIn and we can promote it up onto the screen and get your question answered. So really excited that you're investing your time. I'm going to flip it over to Meg to take it from here.
All right. Excellent. Julie, thank you so much for joining us on this Valentine's Day.
Yeah, Valentine's Day.
Yay, happy Valentine's Day. And we are here to talk about showing our customers some love, but doing it in a way that actually makes an impact on business. And I've had the pleasure of working with Julie in the past. She is the creator of a brand new course called Unlock Customer Revenue, which we'll find a link to and put it in the chat for everyone to see. But Julie, you've worked with companies for a while now, and were, I think, a very early leader and proponent of the role of customer success in the go-to-market revenue engine. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this area, and then we'll switch over to talk about the steps to help you do retention better.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for having me again. It's great to be here. Love this topic. I love the convergence of marketing and customer success, because I've spoken to a lot of marketers over the years. My background is actually, I started in advertising, which not a lot of people know, and then somehow made my way over to B2B SaaS and customer success. But when I was at Eloqua, I mean, our customers were all marketers. And so, and all of a sudden they're starting to think it was all about lead gen then. It was all about lead gen. And fast forward like 2 decades. And now all of a sudden lead gen's not enough, right? It's all about, okay, we get it. We need to help on the retention side of things, but they don't actually know what to do, which I get, right? That hasn't been part of your training. That hasn't been part of your rhythm, right? You run campaigns, you're measured on MQLs, you're partnering with sales. And so, what do? You're being asked to contribute, and how do you do that? And so I'm excited to get into that today. And I'll just encourage anyone listening to apply the same principles, right? Think about your customers as warm leads. And every single year, they need to rebuy from you. And maybe they need to buy more. And so if we have that mindset is like, you have this whole group of warm leads that know you, that hopefully have been getting impact from you and value and understand you and have budget already allocated, which is really cool. Then all of a sudden you can start to market to them in a way and help, like you can drive so much expansion revenue. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, and let's talk for a sec about why it matters to drive some of that expansion revenue. And this is a great statistic from Benchmark.it, which I encourage people to visit. If you are a SaaS company, they've got a treasure trove of interactive benchmarks across a range of areas: sales, marketing, general finance metrics, things like that. And this is one that they have on gross revenue retention. And you can filter it. This isn't live, but you can go to their website and filter it and see if you go to 52. I just picked 50 to 100 million. They also have different average contract values. So you can put in the kind of company that you are and see what you get. But you can see here that if you look at that median, and even if you look at what starts the 75th percentile, a lot of companies are not doing great at this. And this is costing them money. This is making it harder to hit their goals all the time, at least in my view. And a small improvement, even just a percentage point, has a disproportionate impact on revenue and profitability. So this becomes, I think, a really, really critical area to be able to focus on and understand. And I'm just going to, and you can see how they're defining gross revenue retention. Hopefully everybody can see that up here. But, Julie and John, thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. Look, the concept around retaining your customers, everyone knows it's really important, but often it gets left to sort of the side. Oh, customer success is just going to happen. And what's been really interesting is I've been working with a few companies in the last year, especially, I would say, where the CEOs start to realize, or chief revenue officers start to realize, oh my gosh, like they're really waking up. They always knew, but they're really waking up to how big of a problem it is, so much so that they're jumping in. They're like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this because we cannot build and scale a business with a leaky funnel, or a sort of, leaky bucket, or so to speak. And so it's becoming more and more important. And I would say the number one, and so that thought process around, oh, it's over there, it's a problem we'll deal with later, is one of the main reasons we're seeing this, because there's this lack of diligence that we're seeing around a renewal cycle, right? So customer success teams often, like, they have their process, they have their different touch points. Maybe they're doing a QBR, but this might be really controversial. And I'm sorry if I offend anyone right now, but it's weak. There isn't that rigor around and that toughness around asking the really tough questions of your team and of your customers. Why are you doing this? Why are you having these meetings with your customers? What's the actual impact and outcome of it? And when you're doing the renewal pipeline meetings, I encourage any head of CS to go and sit into their sales pipeline meetings, because if you've sat in those, VPs of sales are holding their sales rep feet to the fire. What's a critical event? When are you going to get that answer? Do they have budget? They are asking those tough questions. And I have to say, when I sit in on the renewal meetings, it's softball, right? They're lobbing questions. Oh, okay, you're having another meeting next week. Okay, great. Let me know. Give me an update. That's often, what happens in those meetings. And I want to encourage heads of CS to say, okay, do you know why they would renew? What would make them renew? Why, do you have access to the decision maker? Do they have budget allocated to this for this year? What are they going to do if they don't use our product next year? Have you had that question? And really holding their team's feet to the fire and training. That's the problem. They aren't trained on asking those tough questions. And so often that's intimidating for customer success, but they have to just step up and learn how to do that.
Yeah, I just echoing what Julie said, since you had asked Meg of any perspectives on that. What I've noticed with GRR, NRR, there's a variety of different definitions here that as marketers, I think as operators, we sometimes just kind of gloss over. But what I realized back in my operating days was how important, to what Julie was saying about CEOs kind of waking up saying, you can't create a pipeline with this leaky bucket in place. And that NRR in particular, if you're losing customers at a speed that is too high, you get the sensation of having to work twice as hard on the net new logo acquisition side. And we already know how costly that is. So I think there's been a big pendulum switch for marketers to think more about that NRR and GRR. And there are different definitions of cohorts. Sometimes I've seen it with cohorts, which really gets more precision. Existing customers, is it revenue that's going up across multiple products on customers? There's ways to segment it, enterprise versus non-enterprise. I think the more marketers can dig into those different definitions of how your company's looking at it, the more successful you can be to figure out, okay, what are the strategies to go after that? So that's kind of what I've been observing outside looking in. But I'm curious, Julie, as the pendulum has swung a little bit on the marketing side to getting more involved on this side of the bow tie, do you have any advice there based on your experiences of what they should be looking for, or how they should be, I don't know, maybe even just focused to best help either the CS function or that other side of the bow tie as maybe NRR or GRR kind of wobbling?
And Julie, I just cheated and pulled up the great 5 points you had in your recent blog post. And I encourage everyone to definitely follow Julie's content. And this was a post that really spoke to me for sure, because you talked about how you did what John's talking about for a company and they were able to make pretty fast improvements. So maybe in answer to John's question, if you want to talk a little bit about some of these steps and how you've seen them work.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll talk about these steps and then I'll address the marketing, how can marketing help? So one of the projects that I did with a company was they were having a churn problem. And so I ended up sitting in with their renewal pipeline meeting and coaching each of their CS team members one-on-one for about a month. And here are the 5 things that we ended up doing. So the first thing is the persona piece is critical, right? And that's where marketing can really help also. I'm talking about the personas around who are your main users, we did so much persona work previously together, right? It's what's important to them, what impact for what your company can help them deliver to them personally and to their job. Customer success really needs to understand that so they can go after and understand the questions that they need to ask to the right persona at their customers and to get access to them. And then, the critical questions that they need to ask their customers, like heads of CS, even if sales, these questions are similar to sales, right? Like the same questions you would ask to identify a critical event to get that sale to close to your customers are similar to what you want to ask for a renewal time. And so, being very straightforward and saying, if your renewal, I love this approach, which is if your renewal was tomorrow, would you renew? And asking that question really early to trial close them, figure out why yes and why no, and really understand what it's going to take to renew them if the answer is no. Understanding those critical events that are happening and deadlines that we need to be considerate of. How many of us have had renewals go dark and like the renewal date's passed and you can't get a hold of the customer? It's like, well, why not? Well, they had a product launch going on. So why did we not get this renewal signed earlier or made aware of that? Other critical events where they might actually need to use your product more. And what's interesting there is you might think, oh, well, if they need to use our product more, they'll just ask us. But no, what they're doing is they're actually going out to competitors because someone else in the company is like, oh, we need this solution. And they're going to do research amongst your competitors. Maybe they don't even know that they're using you. And maybe they don't even know that your functionality or that your company has the capability of doing that. And so there's that element too. So take a note, marketers, because educating your customers on the features and functions that your product can deliver to your customer base is a totally missed opportunity. And I'm not talking about product announcements. I'm talking about marketing to your customers, storytelling, videos, all the things to remind them how great your product is and how you can help them deliver on their objectives. Sharing success stories amongst the team. Storytelling is such a lost art. You want to be able to tell your customer stories to your other customers of ways that they've used their product, but also internally, right? Share wins. If you are having a churn problem in your company, your entire CS team is feeling down. They're feeling demotivated every single time they go to a customer call to approach it. They're nervous and they are uncomfortable. They're like, oh, well, I just, have so many churn notices that, why would this one be any different? So we need to share those wins to boost everyone's confidence up to know what's possible, especially the turnarounds, right? Like you have a red account and we got them to turn around and be, and win. Like we have to share that to show it's possible. And then, as I said before, like committing to each action, making sure, asking, who are you going to connect with this week? How are you actually going to get in touch with them? What are you going to talk about on that call? What's your objective at that call? And then, following up with them. Okay, did you have that conversation with them last week? And really making sure that it doesn't slip, because that happens all the time, especially with decision makers. If you don't have a connection with them, okay, I'm going to get on a call with the decision maker this week. They didn't respond to your email. They canceled the meeting. It slipped. And then we kind of just let it slip. So if it didn't happen this week, well, then that's number one objective for next week.
Yeah, Julie, what strikes me about this is these are just sensible actions to be taken.
I know it's sensible. There's a lot to do in CS, and I think it can get very overwhelming sometimes because I find in sales it's so straightforward. You get your leads in, you kind of know, like, I gotta do some demos, I gotta get in touch with these different people, I gotta negotiate a deal, and I gotta close it, and then they're a customer. But like, there's so much that goes on when they're a customer, right? Like, think about the dating phase versus marriage, right? Think about your 15 years of marriage, how long you've been married for, all the things that happen. You get sick, right? You change jobs. Like, there's so many things that can happen with your customer that CS needs to all of a sudden like block and tackle. And so it's so not linear in that world. Yet renewals are the one thing that can be linear. And so mapping that piece out and making it a linear function, and then knowing like, okay, well, these things, these life events will happen, and what to do about them is really important also.
That was a fantastic analogy, and I'm also giddy about that framework that you just shared there too. So you're like singing my love language there on both accounts. Just thinking back to the personas and the key challenge points. Have you seen marketers produce content specifically in this area? And if so, like, what content do you feel like either they're doing a good job or they could do a better job with in communicating to the CS side on these renewals?
So I've seen some decent customer marketing, like around customer advocacy, where you have someone in marketing engaging customers, getting them to help support. It's really about engaging customers to help with lead gen, which is okay too, right? Because if customers are willing enough to be references and referrals and give you reviews, they're happy, they have good stories, capturing those stories and communicating them. I have to say, like, there's not a lot that stands out to me. And so I'm like, challenge, like, you share my email or on LinkedIn. Like, if you've done something awesome in marketing to your customers, I'd love to see it. I'd love to use it as an example the next time I give a talk, or I'll even showcase you on LinkedIn. I think that would be really cool. And I would just really encourage marketers to think about what's going to move the needle and how can you help your CS team. So one area that I find, there's a lot of time we do like quarterly business reviews and customer success or executive business reviews. Hey, marketers, take a look at the deck. Make sure that it looks as good as a deck that you would want to be showcasing for your company. That's the first thing. The second thing is, a common topic that gets discussed is features from this that have been released in the last quarter or the last year. Oftentimes I'll listen to customer success calls, and the common theme that I notice in that call is the CSM brushes over features and functionality. They're like, okay, and here are the new features that we've released in the last little while, and then they move on. And so that's like such a critical time when they can tie feature functionality to impact, and it doesn't happen. So is it all your fault, marketers? Absolutely not. This is a training thing, but you can actually help facilitate that conversation through great marketing. So if you are, if you want to just put some great slides in the deck and then teach the CSM on how to actually storytell and how to communicate that, great. But then also, like, are you actually marketing to your customers? Do you have a nurture sequence for your customers? And I'm going to sort of give myself an objection there, because what you might say is, I've tried, and then my CS team says, don't communicate with my customers, don't mess things up. Like, plow through that. CSMs do not want you talking to their customers. They're afraid you're going to mess things up, or you're going to make it worse. You need to sit down with someone and just map it out and think through ways that you can help elevate their conversations and make it better.
Well, and it looks like we got a good question that I would love to get your thoughts on, Julie. Is there a difference between end user retention strategy and executive retention strategy from a persona POV? What do you think?
100% there is. Chances are the decision maker or the executive who made the core decision on purchasing the product has probably attended one meeting and then said, the main users got this. And so chances are they're not engaged. There's a few things that I would do there. First of all, start nurturing your executives. So how do we want to do this, right? This is a very specific, I have a very specific recommendation of how I want to engage my decision makers. Actually, in my course, I have like a whole section of like how to engage your decision makers, because they don't have time. They don't want to talk to you about your product, but if you ignore them, they think you've done nothing. And so respecting their time and what they care about is my number one thing. And so that's actually, if you're marketing, helping your customer success team understand that persona of the decision maker, what's important to them, how to communicate to them will be really helpful. Because my biggest recommendation for customer success managers is, after you have a meeting with your main user, especially if it's a strategy meeting, send a note to the decision maker, the executive, and say, hey, we just talked about this, this, and this. We're going to pivot. We're going to do this strategy to help you achieve X, Y, and Z. Do you have anything to add? Right? So you're keeping them in the loop. You're letting them know that you're doing great things, and you're giving them the opportunity to contribute without spending any of their time. So you're training the executive to say, every time this company, the CSM at this company communicates with me, it's relevant, it's important, and I need to read it. It's not an update. It's not a meeting invite. It's relevant, pieces of information that they care about. And then you can engage with them at that level at another time. And then also when you need to talk about renewal, they're warmed up for you. And we've already been priming them for the things you've been doing. Whereas the user, the things they need to, like, what are their metrics? What do they need to care about? How are they using your product to get maximum impact to achieve their goals? And making sure that you're helping them hit that so they can look great to their boss. And then that's the other thing, you can help them look great to their boss, right? What boss doesn't want to hear that their team member is doing a phenomenal job? So once in a while, brag about them. Like, send a note to the executive, copy your user and say, hey, just want to let you know that this person has just nailed it. They're one of my top customers. They achieved this. Like, give them a promotion. And maybe don't say that, but.
Those are great food for thought, and just kind of reflecting too on both sides of the funnel and thinking about from a marketer's point of view. Oftentimes we're asked to get quick wins, and the quick wins in terms of segmentation, how would you look at that other side of the funnel in terms of a quicker win? And the reason I ask this is we have a prospective situation where a client wants to do, we call it an account-based motion, and they're looking at risk accounts. Mm-hmm. And I'm not convinced that's the area to be focused on for marketers, because I feel like, you're on the brink of death there. So, that ball can bounce in either direction, but maybe I'm off. Maybe that is the right place to focus on. In your experience, like, how would you look at that segmentation of where can a quicker win be for marketers on the other side of the bow tie?
Yeah, that's at-risk accounts is tough. So at-risk accounts can be resurrected for sure. It takes a lot of muscle. And then there's different categories of at-risk accounts, right? There's at-risk because usage is low, or you don't have connection to the right people. You haven't had those important conversations. And then there's at-risk because, like, they're really just, it's been a year and they haven't gotten any value or anything. So, within at-risk, I would segment that out. And this is unpopular, but at-risk accounts take a lot of time and energy from often your entire team. And I would encourage you to, as a company or as a Tiger team, pick some customers and say they are going to be a ton of work. And yes, we're going to lose the logo, and yes, we're going to lose the revenue, but maybe what can you do with the other time? Because time is finite. So if you put all your resources in saving this account, maybe it's worth it because it's super strategic, or maybe it's really high value. But if you say, you know what, we're just going to part ways with that account so we can focus on making our other accounts more successful, that's a really powerful decision to make. And when done properly, will make your company more successful because you're focusing on the wins, right? You're focusing on making those accounts and growing the accounts who are successful. Quick wins for marketing, though. this is a campaign that I've done several times, where this is a great way for marketing to get involved. Okay, so if you see a group of your customers who could upsell, right? So maybe there's a new product that we can upsell them all on, or one company I did this with last year, it was around adoption. So they had different business, like all of their customers had different business units, and they would sort of buy 1 or 5, but they could buy 20. So we put together an offer they couldn't refuse. And so that's where marketing is great, right? Like help put together these offers to your customers that they can't refuse, that help inject cash into your company immediately. Again, their customers are ready. You're on the budget line item. Like, it's so easy to sell to them. And so if you put together a campaign around like a promo on a new product, buy it now and, get a big discount, get extra users, something like that. It's actually really effective. I did one, and I love doing it at before renewals. And so if you can get your customers to renew early, this is super tactical, but I've used it so many times. I'm going to share. Okay, so you have a new tier or a new product, and you could offer this out to customers who are renewing in 3 months or so, and say, sign up now, get the product now for the next 3 months for free, and do an early renewal. Okay, you've now retained your customer, you've upsold them, and you've given tremendous value because they're getting 3 months free of this new product or this new tier. Like, it costs you nothing. And it's made your CS team's lives so much easier because you've pre-done these renewals. Like, do it 4 months in advance or 6 months in advance. It doesn't matter. You're getting the upsell. You're getting an early renewal. Or you could do it like renew for 2 years. Like, there's different ways to do that, but think creatively around how can you get your customers to renew early, to renew longer, to offer them deals, and to upsell. Those are good quick wins that you can do.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, Julie. Thank you. And I know we're a little bit over time because there's so much good stuff to talk about here. Thank you again for joining us and for sharing your great knowledge. And I see we've got your LinkedIn in the comments, so people can definitely stay in touch. But Julie, thank you. And any final thoughts or comments?
No, thanks so much for having me. It's been great to see you both again.
Julie, really excited to have you come back. So thank you for investing the time and the expertise. And as Meg mentioned, Julie's LinkedIn is down below. And next week, Meg, I think we've got a special guest. Is it Joe that?
We do. We have Joe Ort, who has been an amazing RevOps leader from multiple interesting companies, including the one that I worked for, Serious Decisions. And he's recently started his own business around RevOps, but he is a particular guru on forecasting. And I can attest to the quality of his forecasts, having worked with them myself. So he's going to come and talk to us a little bit about ways to get forecasting to be more accurate, and also why forecasting should be something that marketers understand and get involved in. So he'll talk a little bit about both sides of that. So I'm really excited to welcome Joe next week. Hopefully folks can join us.
And I hope I can join as well. I think hopefully if my flight lands in time, I'll be joining, because I do agree with you. Marketers absolutely should be pivotal in that conversation of forecasting. And oftentimes it's forgotten about, and it is critical skill set to have. So really looking forward to it. We'll see you next week, same time. Thank you.
And happy Friday and happy Valentine's, everybody.
Yeah.